Think you've seen every classic worth watching? Think again. Buried beneath blockbuster rubble from the 50s through 80s are cinematic dynamite sticks critics adored, audiences ignored, and today's auteurs secretly worship. We've unearthed 15, newly restored and streaming, each so ahead of its time it still feels dangerous. Ready to strike the match? 1. Sweet Smell of Success, 1957. James Wong. Howe's nocturnal camera work, Elmer Bernstein's snarling jazz, and Clifford Odets's acid-tipped dialogue make this cynical newsroom noir crackle. Tony Curtis torches his pretty boy image as desperate press flack Sidney Falco, selling his soul for a gossip column inch, while Burt Lancaster stalks Times Square as J.J. Hunsaker, king of the one-liner death warrant. Dealings unfold in neon alleys, smoke-heavy clubs, and 3 a.m. diners where morality costs less than coffee. The breakneck pacing still feels shockingly modern, and the climactic street chase throbs with menace. Ignored by 1957 audiences unnerved by its pitch-black worldview, the film vanished for decades, only to resurface as a cult Bible filmmaker's quote by heart. Watch it now, and you'll spot DNA later spliced into Goodfellas, Succession, and every media mogul satire since. Proof a razor-sharp script and moral rot never expire. 2. The Innocence, 1961. Jack Clayton adapts Henry James's Turn of the Screw into a haunting gothic dream that somehow escaped mainstream legend. Deborah Kerr gives a career-best performance as a governess convinced her orphan charges are possessed by the estate's dead lovers. Freddie Francis's CinemaScope photography drowns candle flames in inky corridors, while composer Georges Auric sneaks nursery rhymes into shrieking wind. The production used silent-era camera tricks, gauze, mirrors, iris wipes, to turn Daylight Gardens uncanny. Censors flinched at its sexual subtext, so the studio buried the campaign. Horror crowds missed it amid hammer bloodbaths. Today, its whispered ambiguities feel tailor-made for Hereditary fans, and the finale's frozen kiss still jolts harder than jump scares. Listen on headphones. Ghost sighs hide under crickets and ticking clocks. If you crave a horror film that crawls under your skin without a single drop of gore, this understreamed masterpiece is waiting on the darkest tab of your queue. 3rd, Seconds, 1966. John Frankenheimer's paranoid sci-fi tragedy asks, what if a corporation sold you a brand new life? Middle-aged banker Arthur Hamilton fakes his death, receives plastic surgery, and re-emerges as rock-jawed Tony Randall, but the fresh start curdles into existential terror. James Wong Howe straps a wide-angle lens to a body rig, warping faces and hallways into funhouse nightmares, while Jerry Goldsmith's organ score hums like a funeral dirge for identity. Audiences in '66 hated its bleakness. The studio panicked, yanking ads after 2 weeks. Today its themes, body modification, curated personas, Silicon Valley immortality schemes, feel clairvoyant. The notorious grape-crushing Bacchanal was shot at a real California commune. Studio execs reportedly fled the set blushing. Rock Hudson, hidden in the closet of studio imagecraft, channels private anguish into Hudson 2.0's breakdown, making the collapse hit doubly hard. Equal parts Twilight Zone nightmare and art house lament. Seconds is the sleeper classic every identity theft thriller owes rent. 4. Wake in Fright, 1971. Long lost and recently resurrected, Ted Kotcheff's outback descent remains Australia's most terrifying cultural mirror. Schoolteacher John Grant, stranded in the mining town of Bundinyaba, tumbles from polite beers to feral roo shooting, egged on by Donald Pleasance's Mephistophelian doctor. The kangaroo hunt uses real nighttime Coyle footage, so raw the crew quit drinking for a week, making audiences recoil like Grant himself. Shelved in the U.S. after a disastrous Grindhouse release, the negative vanished until 2009, when a print surfaced in a Pittsburgh warehouse marked for destruction. Modern critics hailed it as Down Under Deliverance, but nastier. Sunlight breeds madness, mateship masks predation, and civilization peels away faster than sun-blistered skin. Quentin Tarantino screens it for cast parties. Nick Cave calls it the Australian horror film. If sweaty psychological freefall is your pint, crack a lukewarm lager, press play, and discover why native viewers still debate whether it's masterpiece or national insult. 5. The Friends of Eddie Coyle, 1973. Before Goodfellas glamorized wise guys, Peter Yates painted Boston crime life as cold cash and carry despair. Robert Mitchum, eyes heavy as wet cement, plays small-time gunrunner Eddie Coyle, juggling ATF snitches, IRA buyers, and mob bosses who'd rather ice a pal than skip dessert. Screenwriter Paul Monash keeps George V. Higgins' street corner slang intact. Dialogue feels eavesdropped, not written. No car chases, no slow-mo squibs, just fluorescent supermarkets and Dunkin' Donut stalls where betrayals trade hands with coffee. 1973 audiences, primed for Serpico heroics, shrugged. Box office fizzled. Yet modern noir heads rate it top shelf. Ben Affleck lifted its tone for the town, and Scorsese quotes Mitchum's weary shrug in The Departed. Watch Mitchum study his reflection in a bus window blackout, and you'll feel every bruise of a life spent almost breaking even. Proof that crime stories can whisper and still draw blood. 6. Sorcerer, 1977. William Friedkin followed The Exorcist with this diesel-soaked thriller, only to be steamrolled by Star Wars on release weekend. 4 international fugitives haul nitroglycerin across South American jungle roads. 1 pothole equals vaporized flesh. Friedkin shot in Dominican mud rivers, nearly drowned Roy Scheider, and replaced half the crew after malaria outbreaks. Tangerine Dream's throbbing synths predate Blade Runner by 5 years. And the rope bridge sequence, filmed on a real bridge over a flood-swollen gorge, remains white-knuckle unrivaled. Restored in 4K, its sweat, fog, and existential dread feel eerily contemporary, capitalism's expendables driving literal suicide missions. Directors from Nolan to Villeneuve cited, yet most viewers still haven't braved the trip. Buckle tight, this road movie explodes long before the dynamite does. 7. 3 Women, 1977. Robert Altman claimed the idea arrived in a dream, and the film floats like one. Shelley Duvall's chatty Texan nurse befriends sissy SpaceX childlike newcomer at a desert spa. Identities melt, personalities swap, and lonely murals of reptilian goddesses watch it all. With 0 studio notes, Altman improvised daily, letting Duvall pen her own gloriously mundane dialogue. My hero is Dr. Pepper. Critics cheered, audiences scratched heads, and the film disappeared into VHS purgatory. Today, its shimmered pastel palette and gas station existentialism feel right at home beside Mulholland Drive and Persona. Listen for Gerald Busby's flute drone score whispering unease beneath still swimming pools, a hypnotic puzzle box begging for repeat viewings, especially after midnight. 8. The Long Goodbye, 1973. Altman again, flipping Raymond Chandler into SoCal stoner noir. Elliot Gould's mumbling Philip Marlowe lugs a tabby cat, chain smokes unlit cigarettes, and navigates 1970s Malibu where gangsters wear yoga pants. Audiences expecting Bogart walked out. Now critics cite it as the missing link between classic noir and postmodern crime. Cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond pre-fogged the negative for sun-bleached nostalgia, while John Williams turns the title tune into jazz, mariachi, and elevator muzak variations that stalk every scene. Look for Arnold Schwarzenegger's silent goon cameo in Paisley Briefs. Time has finally caught up with this woozy gem. Its cynical charm and casual menace feel tailor-made for pandemic-era malaise. 9. Local Hero, 1983. Bill Forsyth's coastal serenade starts with Houston dealmaker Mac McIntyre, Peter Riegert, dispatched to a speck of Scottish shoreline to buy out the entire village for a Knox oil refinery. The locals, far from outraged, compete over who'll get the bigger payout, until the area's lone beachcomber, Old Ben, quietly reminds everyone that the sands they're selling are ancient, fragile, and possibly cosmic. Forsyth layers whimsy over sly satire. A punk rock publican tends bar in bunny slippers. The inn's accountant moonlights as an astrologer. Rabbit-eared TV aerials sprout like thistles from stone crofts. Mark Knopfler's first solo score mixes folk pipes with Fender licks, drifting through scenes like sea mist. Burt Lancaster, 65 and twinkling, plays Knox's CEO, a stargazer who'd rather catalog comets than crunch quarterly profits. His boardroom telescope becomes a running gag. Cinematographer Chris Menges basks sunset light on tidal pools so clear you half expect selkies to surface. Box office was modest amid Return of the Jedi mania, but PBS late shows and VHS swaps turned it cult. Eco-themes land gently. One tossed beer bottle becomes a shooting star in reverse. And that red phone booth Northern Lights coda. Pure endorphin cinema. Proof serenity can feel as epic as explosions. 10. The King of Comedy, 1982. Long before TikTok stalkers and manifesting gurus, Scorsese served up Rupert Pupkin, patron saint of entitlement. De Niro's wannabe comic rehearses talk show monologues in his mother's basement. Cardboard audience taped to a wall. Applause cued by needle drop. When network brass ignore him, Rupert kidnaps host Jerry Langford, Jerry Lewis, weaponizing real-life grumpiness, with the help of Sandra Bernhard's fangirl Masha, whose bondage seduction of Langford is equal parts cringe and terror. Production folklore. Lewis, himself a late-night veteran, ad-libbed the frigid sidewalk. Insult. You shouldn't wear fur, kid, you need a leash. After a real heckler bumped him during a take, Scorsese shot guerrilla style on Manhattan streets, instructing De Niro to mingle with pedestrians in character. Many extras are stunned tourists. The studio buried marketing when early screenings flatlined, yet industry insiders took notes. Johnny Carson beefed up security. Letterman called it the movie comics whisper about. Composer Robbie Robertson arranges hits from B.B. King to Talking Heads that underscore Rupert's delusions like victory laps. 40 years later, every thirst trap prankster live streaming arrests owes royalties. Fresh 4K restoration sharpens grain on Rupert's sweat-slick brow, uncomfortable clarity for an era that turned fame into currency. 11. After Hours, 1985. What begins as a harmless coffee shop flirtation slides into nocturnal purgatory when word processor Paul Hackett, Griffin Dunn, ventures downtown to meet quirky sculptor Marcy, Rosanna Arquette. One lost $20 bill triggers a domino run of albino bouncers, punk barbers, mohawked Linda Fiorentino, accidental death by plaster of Paris, and an angry Soho vigilante mob led by ice cream vendor Catherine O'Hara blaring a cowbell. Scorsese, fresh off Last Temptation delays, shot handheld with stripped-down crews, painting wet cobbles and neon blues that predate Goodfellas' Copacabana glide. Production trivia. Dunn actually clung to the moving Mr. Softy van, no stunt double, dodging garbage cans hurled by bored onlookers roped in as extras. Howard Shore's synth score mimics elevated heartbeats, spiking whenever another locked door slams in Paul's face. Test audiences demanded a happier ending. Scorsese defiantly looped the film back to where it started, a Kafkaesque Ouroboros 9-5. Though box office tanked, Night Owls turned it into a rite of passage 3 a.m. watch, citing cameos by Terry Garr's Beehive Waitress and Cheech and Chong's Art Thieves. If you've ever mislaid subway fare after midnight, Hackett's frantic sprint home will feel like found footage from your worst commute. 12th Manhunter, 1986. Michael Mann's fluorescent procedural introduced Hannibal Lecter, spelled that way here, long before Hopkins slurped Chianti. William Peterson's profiler, Will Graham, scarred by psychic proximity to Lecter, returns to hunt the Tooth Fairy killer, Tom Noonan, ethereal and terrifying, who stayed in character off-set, so child actors avoided him at lunch. Mann bathes scenes in velvety blues and surgical greens, using custom gels that make nighttime Miami exude aquarium coolness. Lecter's cell is an all-white zoo cage filmed inside Atlanta's High Museum. Echoes ring like conscience. Composer Michel Rubini merges synth pads with Iron Butterfly's apocalyptic In Agata de Vida for a climax that blew out early DTS test speakers. Critics dismissed its gloss. VHS junkies embraced it, labeling tape spines with neon markers. Influences ripple everywhere. CSI's forensic light tables, Mindhunter's empathy burnout arcs, even Drive's pastel menace. Shout Factory's 4K includes Mann's director's cut, extra minutes of Graham's beachside panic attack, and Lecter's smirking phone psychoanalysis. Watch those Miami palms sway against teal skylines and realize celluloid can be as razor-sharp as obsidian. 13. Near Dark, 1987. Kathryn Bigelow steered $5 million into a moonlit collision of Western grit and vampire bloodlust when studios wanted Lost Boys pop. Hitchhiking farm kid Caleb, Adrian Pasdar, gets love-bitten by May, Jenny Wright, and drafted into a nomadic clan of Civil War-era vamps, Henriksen, Paxton, and Goldstein, fresh from Aliens, still oozing camaraderie and cordite. The infamous bar massacre was shot with breakaway walls, so Paxton's psychotic Severin could drag a spurred boot across patron throats uncut. Tangerine Dream's synth lullabies meet revving pickup engines, wedding nocturnal romance to diesel fumes. Box office flopped, no major city ads, but festival-goers dubbed it Punk Shane. Bigelow's day-for-night photography painted Oklahoma wheat fields in cobalt. Digital 4K finally restores that bruised Twilight palette. Themes of Outsider, Found Family resonate harder, post-Twilight. None sparkle, all smolder. When dawn ignites Severin like magnesium, the practical FX still shame modern CGI embers. An eternal cult ride under desert stars. 14. Withnail and I, 1987. Bruce Robinson distilled starving actor misery into quotable nectar. 1969, London flatmates Withnail, Richard E. Grant, teetotal yet legendary as blackout drunk. Anne Marwood, Paul McGann, flee Camden squalor to Uncle Monty's Lake District cottage, by mistake, facing rain, randy bulls, and tinned peas. Production snag, Grant's first real alcohol was the finale's Hamlet soliloquy. Robinson fed him champagne for authentic slur. Quotes, "We've gone on holiday by accident. I demand some booze," became pub passwords. Fans created the Withnail drinking game, matching Grant's intake, roughly 9 bottles. UK barely broke even. US release went straight to art house VHS, yet generations now pass it like a flask to drama students. Ralph Brown's speed freak Danny delivers a drug-addled monologue forecasting the 1990s when they will sell you back your memories. Prophetic pre-NFT jab. Ending in Camden rain to Jimi Hendrix's All Along the Watchtower. It's a farewell to youth and a toast to beautiful failure. 15. One from the Heart, 1981. Flush with Apocalypse. Now cachet, Coppola gambled Zoetrope's future on a neon-lit musical fairy tale. He built a full Las Vegas strip on a soundstage, draped it in saturated reds and cobalt blues, and insisted Vittorio Storaro light scenes as living Technicolor paintings. Terry Garr and Frederick Forrest play a couple whose 5th anniversary fight spawns fantasies with carnival ride cranes and split-screen dance numbers. Choreography captured live, rare for Hollywood musicals, post-1950s. Tom Waits and Crystal Gale recorded vocals in the pit as actors sang on set. Waits's gravel lullabies earned an Oscar nomination, but the $26 million experiment opened opposite E.T., grossing less than $1 million and shoving Coppola into years of debt. Critics have since hailed its audacious artifice. Spielberg calls it cinema dreaming about itself. Restored in 4K Dolby Vision, the mirrored Midnight Tango glows like radioactive candy, finally justifying every maxed-out lean. Press play and witness a director bet the house on pure stylistic bliss, and 4 decades later, finally win.